Hello friends, it is Jordan, or now I go by this new Dharma name, Karuna, and once again I'm here at Maple, the monastic academy, and it's a pretty nice day outside. Some clouds, but overall a good opportunity to get outside, and why not make another video. So today in this video I will be talking about how should we phrase this? My gratitude for one thing that comes up in the training, when you're training here at Maple, it is guaranteed that stuff will come up. Your patterns will come up. Pain and confusion and fear, hope, a lot of that will come up in this training. And it's just something that I'm so grateful for, because it's something that my own stuttering, I'm a person who stutters. There's nothing physical about my anatomy that prevents me from speaking. It's more of a cognitive, affective, and behavioral thing. And my dad stutters. I assume, we kind of assumed as a family that I got it from him. But I stutter. I've been stuttering since childhood. And I underwent speech therapy, and I learned that stuttering is a cognitive, affective, and behavioral thing. So thoughts cause emotions. That's affective. That's what affective means, the emotional side of it. And the behavioral part of it, which is something like tensing muscles or avoiding speaking, And, I have a friend who stutters. He actually told me about Maple. He was a resident at Maple for 2 years back in the early days. It was called CML at that time, not Maple. But he was a CML resident, and he stutters, and he actually inspired me to see my stuttering as a tough love kind of teacher. Soryu, the head teacher of Maple, is a tough love teacher. And our culture here really embodies that. I use tough love as a way of phrasing it. I'm not quite sure if that's the best way of phrasing it, because it's not always like that. It really depends on the person or the situation. Sometimes it is tough love. In many cases it is tough love. But in some cases it's not quite tough love. But I would say what people might see when they come to Maple is it would be more often the case that they would see that tough love side than the more gentle side. I'm actually not sure if that's true, but I'd have to think about that. But anyways, oftentimes in the training, you will be put on the spot, or, you will be challenged to take on certain responsibilities. And, there is the expectation that you have the emotional maturity to take on these responsibilities. And you don't have to be perfect at it, but you do have to show, you do have to demonstrate your willingness to persevere, to learn, to grow, to become more and more skillful at, you know, your responsibilities, and you know, not just in responsibility, but also in awakening. You know, we have these two components of the training, awakening and responsibility. So, you know, there is the expectation that you be more and more responsible and more trustworthy each day, and you show the willingness to do that. But also in terms of awakening, there is the expectation that you really throw yourself into like retreats, and you really be practicing, you know, all the time. You know, it's actually expected that, you know, like you not squander your practice even for a moment. You know, there are all these expectations, and you're really challenged. And, you know, when you're in this training, a lot of resistance, a lot of fear, a lot of confusion even will come up. And this is the perfect, most beautiful opportunity to see it as something to, you know, be grateful for, to have this perspective of, wow, I get to take care of my friends, my Dharma family, rather than thinking, oh, I have to do this, seeing it as like a chore. You know what I mean? And also another example of what might come up in this training is shame. You might feel deeply ashamed, like I am a worthless person, or maybe you feel like you're treated that way. Maybe people don't really treat you in a way that you might hope for. You know, maybe you want to be coddled or something. But it really helps to see, like, what if it's the case that I feel this sense of shame because I failed to, you know, demonstrate my trustworthiness. I failed to take responsibility. And what if this is why, you know, people are not looking up to me as, you know, trustworthy, or you know, a responsible person, or whatever it is. This is so important to see, because, you know, I actually remember, this was long before I came to Maple. I remember watching this video about, it was something like how to be more productive, or why am I not productive, something like that. Because at that time, I found myself feeling very lazy, very unmotivated, you know, not having much discipline, you know, and wondering, like, how can I be more productive? Or how can I be more motivated to get up every morning, you know, rather than just stay in bed or whatever, binge watch YouTube, feeling like, I just feel like indulging in this endless consumption, you know, all day. I just have no motivation to get up in the morning. And in the video, you know, the video made it clear that in our society, we tend to think that, you know, because we feel a certain way, this is why we act accordingly. You know, for example, it's because I feel lazy that I think I'm just gonna stay in bed longer and watch more and more endless, you you know, whatever it is, YouTube or Netflix or whatever it is. But actually, the video, I remember a specific quote from the video. It said, emotions, it was something like, maybe I don't remember it exactly. It was something like, emotions don't dictate actions, but it's the other way around. Actions dictate emotions. It's because you stay in bed that you continue to feel lazy and just unmotivated. How can you feel more motivated? By getting out of bed, by actually doing what needs to be done. And this is the same thing applies here at Maple. Why do we feel this sense of shame? Well, the sense of shame should not justify why we should avoid responsibility, but it's important to see, and if you don't believe me, really look at it and pay attention. Why do I feel this sense of shame? Why do I feel like I'm treated, you know, in accord with my sense of shame? It's because of my, you know, lack of taking responsibility. That is why I feel so ashamed. How can I stop feeling so ashamed? I take responsibility. The more you give, the more you will receive many-fold. Actually, this was a teaching that I received from an online teacher. This was before I came to Maple. And this same teaching, I believe, is actually in the Bible. I'm going to turn around. So the same teaching is in the Bible, that the more you give, the more you will receive many-fold. You may think that, what's the point in giving when my friends don't treat me like, you know, like it's worth anything to give, if that's the right way of phrasing it. But actually, this is the wrong way of seeing it, because, you know, it's just, I'm so grateful that I've found myself in this situation of feeling the pain, like, oh, these people are hurting me, why should I help them? You know, this kind of thing. Well, what if I give or start giving? And then you will see, maybe not away, maybe it takes some time, but you will see this has a positive ripple effect. These people are now seeing me as a responsible person or a responsible leader. Wherever you are in the, I don't know what you would call it, hierarchy, or I'm not sure if I would call it a hierarchy, but because you're basically working together as a community, even though we each have our own roles, we're each working as a unified collective whole. And it's really helpful to see that you are not separate from the community, that you are all working together. And if for a moment you think you are separate, then already you're in trouble. It's very important to see that how I see myself in relation to the community, this really matters. So my stuttering is sort of the same way. You know, it's really awkward and uncomfortable, and in fact it produces, it gives me a lot of social anxiety when I'm in a speaking situation, especially with someone I don't know very well, or maybe I'm in a certain dynamic in which I tend, well, whatever the case is, certain speaking situations tend to give me a lot of anxiety, and I might see that anxiety as a reason for why I should either fight, like push the words out, or why I should avoid the speaking situation altogether. But the real way forward is to be in the speaking situation even when it feels like it's gonna harm me. But then, like, every time I can see that this speaking situation can't harm me, I am actually harming myself because I am not doing the thing that needs to be done in this moment, because I am not facing my fear. And, you know, every time I'm able to just face it and just do the thing that needs to be done, I feel so much better. I feel so good about myself. I have no reason to feel the sense of shame anymore because I have succeeded. You know, otherwise I have this sense of defeat. I've basically let myself down because I avoided, or because I chose to fight, or because I chose to buy into this prapanca, which, by the way, if you don't know what prapanca means, I made a separate video about that, so feel free to watch that. But it's because I bought into this story or this excuse that my mind comes up with. That's the reason why I feel ashamed. That's the reason why I've basically hurt myself. That is why other people just can't see me as a trustworthy friend. And wow, it's so grateful to know that this pain and confusion is actually a reason for me to practice harder, to face the challenge, to rise to the challenge, rather than to back away or flinch or make excuses like, oh, people don't seem to care about me or look up to me as a real friend. No, maybe the reason why is I am not being a good friend. I am not rising to this challenge. I am not doing what needs to be done. Pain and confusion is another thing. Maybe the reason why we feel so confused when we have to take on this new role and we don't know how to do it is because we're too lost in our heads. This is something else to mention. And we might use this prapanca, this, constant being stuck in our heads and trying to figure things out mentally or conceptually. It's because we're so stuck in our heads that we are unable to do it. We really have this sense that the way to figure things out is to use our heads. This is my sense making. But really what the training challenges you to do is to drop body, mind, and life. That's what we chant every morning. That's a part of our meditation technique called the Jade Method. Every day we're really striving to drop body, mind, and life. When we identify with our minds, that could also include seeing the mind as our way of sense-making. But what if you could learn this new way, which is really just the old way? This is the way that, well, perhaps we were, perhaps we weren't born with this kind of sense-making that relies on thinking. Maybe it's society that conditioned us to see it that way, to truly believe, like deep down, whether consciously or unconsciously, that the way to sense make is to use and rely on the mind. But, let's say your practice, your technique, is to follow the breath. Well, Soryu has constantly told us, trust this breath. Let this breath be, this is my own words, but you let the breath be your guide. Trust this breath and let this way, this approach of sense making be the default mode of sense making. To truly trust the practice. It doesn't have to be the breath. It could be whatever practice you have. So my point is, confusion will arise. It's guaranteed that it will arise. And rather than, like, if your way of sense making is to use and to rely on the mind in order to sense making, and in order to sense make, then it's guaranteed. I mean, we've seen it again and again and again. The mind cannot be trusted. You cannot use the mind to sense make. You know, it is stressed. Soryu has stressed it. It's important that we do what actually works. Does this way of sense making that relies, that depends on this identification of mind, such that we see the mind as, like, using the mind as the way to sense make, you know, that approach will always fail. It always fails in the training. You know, the training is really made to challenge you to drop this intellectual, conceptual way of sense making and to instead use the practice of the breath or whatever it is to sense make. And, you know, it's actually helpful. It's actually helpful when this confusion arises, because it's like this it's like this tough love teacher reminding you, hey, wait a second, like, I just caught myself being stuck in conceptual grasping, or being stuck in this ineffective way of sense making, and it really helps to get you to, you know, it's a good reminder to really get back into the practice, to maintain the practice. It's really hard to maintain the practice. Really hard. We have been conditioned to live in such a way that does not allow us or remind us or invite us to practice. You know, in society, we're constantly living in this rat race, and so much of what happens is based on this ineffective way of sense making, is constantly conceptually grasping, constantly getting stuck in prapanca. And it's just, we can see how much harm that has caused. I mean, it becomes clear when you're really practicing, when you're training here at Maple, why and how it is the case that being lost in prapanca does so much harm. So maybe I'm starting to ramble a bit, but to get back to my point, all this pain, all this confusion, you know, I know it really hurts. It's so hard to go through this. It's so hard to be so vulnerable and surrounded by your friends who are constantly poking at you and being like, please don't do this, please do this. And maybe they don't even make eye contact with you, or they pretend that you're not even in the room. That is something to be so grateful for, because, you know, when you see that, when you experience that happening, all this pain and confusion, like, oh, what is going on here? I thought we were friends, I thought, whatever. When it, you know, it can really hurt. I know, I've experienced this. but it's such a great opportunity, something to be so grateful for. Just like with my stuttering, like, hey, you aren't using your speech tools. And sometimes I end up thinking, like, if I'm stuttering really badly and I'm feeling so ashamed or I'm feeling so much discomfort, you know, I go to the store and I might have a question and I ask a grocery clerk, hey, and the grocery clerk goes, huh, what? And I'm like, oh, and I'm really pushing the words out, and they're all confused, and I feel ashamed, and I just spiral. I'm just spiraling out of control here because, you know, I have the wrong mindset. Rather than thinking this, it would be so much more helpful to think, wait a second, I don't have to fight, or I don't have to run away. You know, this is actually, and not even getting lost in thinking. Like, I don't even have to think. I can just be like, wow, I'm tensing up, and I just let go. I don't have to tense up, you know? And most of you probably don't know that much about stuttering and haven't undergone speech therapy like I have. I mean, why should you? You don't stutter. Which is nice to not stutter, but, you know, I actually am really grateful for the fact that I stutter, because this is like a built-in tough love teacher that's like always on my case about, you know, here at Maple, each of us has a practice. We have a technique. As a person who stutters, I see the speech tools that I learned in speech therapy as a part of my practice, which is something that it's just something else to just be so grateful for. Like, I have another reminder, like, wow, I'm going insane. I need to just let go, be in my practice, which means using my speech tools. Interestingly, I don't stutter on camera, so I usually don't think about using my tools as much when I'm on camera, when I'm alone. And so I might not have that reminder, you know, right now, for example, but when I'm in a speaking situation where I'm actually interacting with someone else, or when I'm with a group of people, you know, it's so tempting to just shut down. It's so tempting to be like hiding, you know, or it's so tempting to try and like push the words out. Like, maybe it's because of a fear of stuttering. I might sound weird. I might sound whatever. And, you know, at Maple, it's so helpful. You know, I have the tendency to speak quietly. People have actually said to me to speak louder. And it's just something to be so grateful for. Like, I don't have to speak so quietly. You know, because I speak so quietly, I'm like so small, and I make myself seem so like insignificant, and my self-esteem goes down, my self-confidence goes down, and there's like this sense of shame, like I'm not worthy of being heard. No, I'm encouraged. I've been given feedback to speak louder. Yes, I will speak louder. And already I have so much more confidence. It's amazing. I don't have to feel so, you know, shameful. I don't have to feel so powerless and, you know, worthless. I'm not worthless, so I will choose to act in a way that makes me feel more confident, with more self-esteem. And others will see me as more trustworthy because they can see my confidence in myself. And because I'm confident, I am no longer running away from responsibilities. I am rising to the challenges. This is so important, so profound. Something that needs to be communicated. As was said in that YouTube video, it's actions that dictate emotions, not the other way around. So I hope this teaching is meaningful and relevant. May it inspire you to live in a way that does not lead to you feeling ashamed or worthless, or makes you a trustworthy and responsible person. And I'm going to end it right here. I hope you have a very nice rest of your day. Best wishes to you on your path.